Remember Marvin Williams? He was a former number 2 overall pick, and for the first 8 to 10 years of his career, he was considered a massive bust. But he hung around for a long time, and eventually, by the time he got to Charlotte, Williams found his niche. He adapted his game, learned to shoot threes, and played better defense, and he became a valuable contributor to his team. This is an example of a former bust who revived his career. 5 years ago, I made a video on this topic. It was one of my earlier videos when I first started this channel, so the commentary and editing is not fantastic, but it's worth a watch if you're interested. Anyway, today, let's talk about 2 other players in the current NBA who are doing the same thing: Aaron Gordon and Andrew Wiggins. This is how they went from being perceived as former busts to now revitalizing their careers. What took them so long, and what made them struggle when they first came in, and how did that change? How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and without further ado, let's get started. So, the first thing I should mention for both Gordon and Wiggins is that they got drafted to losing teams that were tanking and unsuccessful for years. When you get drafted to a losing team, especially the Wolves and Magic, who back then lacked any sort of competent management, it was a disaster from the get-go, and it certainly impacts how young players play. For Gordon, he always had the talent in him. He displayed it in Orlando. In many seasons, he was putting up numbers, though back then, most people only recognized him for his dunk contest performance. No one really watched him play outside of Orlando. The issue was, the type of player he wanted to be, it just wasn't him. Gordon was asked to do too much, and he wanted to do too much. At one point, he was even put into the role of a point forward. The Magic tried so many experiments with him. They tried to turn him into a playmaker, but that wasn't his forte. Out of all the young players in Orlando back then, he was the guy with the most potential. The number 4 pick of the 2014 draft and once considered a top 3 prospect in the world, Gordon had a large task to live up to. Physically, athletically, this dude was abnormally gifted. According to a P3 data report, Gordon's fastest time in his slide agility test, the speed in which he can move laterally 5 yards, change direction, and slide back, was clocked at 2.49, roughly a tenth of a second faster than the average NBA guard. For a guy of his size, that's remarkable. He was, and still is, freakishly athletic. I mean, I'm sure you know that already from the dunk contest, but in the actual games, the question was if he could maximize these physical tools and use them to its fullest advantage. In his early days in Orlando, that didn't seem like the case. Granted, it wasn't entirely the team's fault either. Gordon himself wanted this responsibility, but he had somewhat of an identity issue. He didn't even know what position he wanted to play either. It took years for him to realize who he wanted to be as a player. Theoretically, his size, his speed, and quickness should be a mismatch for anybody defending him. But instead, he played like he wanted to be Kobe. Gordon took an obscene amount of mid-range shots, a ton of jumpers, fadeaways that he just wasn't consistently making. On the Denver Nuggets now, he's completely flipped the script. Gordon is taking 54% of his attempts at the rim, compared to just 32% from 2017 to 2020 on the Magic. This has resulted in Gordon having by far the best efficiency of his career. In fact, his 67.4% true shooting percentage is tied for 8th best in the entire NBA. This is such a huge turnaround, and the thing is, he's always had this in him. He was always capable of playing like this, but in the past, he wanted to expand his game beyond what he could do. He tried to do too much, but once he simplified his game, he's done so much better. Instead of forcing up jumpers, trying to dive into multiple defenders like he's MJ or something, Gordon now has an identity as a rim runner, a slasher, and finisher who plays off the Nuggets' other threats. Gordon is never going to be the man on the team, but he's a perfect complementary piece. I think people give Jokic a ton of credit for allowing Gordon to flourish in the offense, which is fair. If you play alongside Jokic, he's going to find you in your best spots. But Gordon himself deserves a ton of credit for recognizing what his strengths are and maximizing his play based on that. Over the last few years, the Nuggets' primary core consisted of Jokic, Murray, and Porter. Unfortunately, with Murray and Porter's injuries, they needed someone else to step up. That's why they traded for Gordon, not knowing what to expect. When the Nuggets signed him for 4 years, $92 million, it initially was met with skepticism. Like, is he really what the Nuggets need as the final piece of their core? Can these 4 young players really lead this team to a title? Since then, he shattered those doubts. His complete turnaround is a very pleasant surprise, and now he's the second best player on the team, honestly. I'm hoping to see this Nuggets team make a run for the title. It's kinda weird to call a guy who averaged over 23 points a game at the age of 21 a bust. But compared to what we expected from Wiggins coming in, his entire tenure in Minnesota was extremely underwhelming. I actually compare his career to someone like RJ Barrett's. Barrett also put up decent counting stats in his first few years, but the numbers just feel empty. For Wiggins, he was supposed to be even better, being the #1 pick and deemed the best prospect in the country when he graduated high school. Even though Wiggins also put up decent counting numbers, something was always missing in his game. Early on, it was his defense and shot selection that was frustrating to watch. Wiggins used to take a substantial number of long twos. In fact, roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of his shots were long twos in his first couple years. Once he got to the Warriors, only 10% of his shots come from there now. It wasn't just his shot selection and poor efficiency either. For so many years, both the Wolves and Magic had a losing culture. They had no direction of where they wanted to go and who they wanted to build around. Wiggins and Cat were supposed to be the duo of their future. But over time, Wiggins' career stagnated, and he started to regress around the time he should have been reaching his prime. Even when he joined the Warriors, it was during a season that was completely decimated with injuries, so he only got minutes because they were losing anyway. Nobody thought this was the time he'd finally turn his career around. He could have easily just been left rotting on the Warriors' bench. But no, he took this opportunity and ran with it. Unlike Aaron Gordon, whose game transitioned closer to the basket, Wiggins went the opposite direction. Over the summers, he expanded his range out to the three-point line. If he was going to be taking all those long twos, then you might as well take threes instead. He was never a horrible three-point shooter, even in Minnesota, but it certainly wasn't a strong point until he got to Golden State. Kerr and the coaching staff told him they wanted him to work on his three-point shot, because those are the shots he's going to be open for. With Curry, Clay, and even Jordan Poole taking most of the attention, Wiggins has a lot of space to shoot. He's going to be open a lot. That's the thing about going from a bad team, where you're expected to do too much, to a good team with a superstar along your side. The game becomes so much easier when you play next to great players. This applies to both Wiggins and Gordon. The game now comes naturally. Every shot isn't heavily contested like it used to be. Wiggins is playing more free than ever. While I know people made a mockery of him becoming an all-star starter last year, which, I will admit it was kind of out of reach. He was good, but no way a starter. However, it was a testament to how far he's come. Not only do the coaches respect him, but the media and the reporters do as well. This season, he's playing better than he's ever had before. He's shooting 45% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts per game. That's just insane. Like, if you were to tell me this 5 years ago that Wiggins could do this, I would not believe it. He's shooting better than prime Klay Thompson. As of now, he currently has the 7th best three-point percentage in the NBA. Not just that, but we've seen his drastic improvement on defense as well. Back on the Wolves, his defense was a point of debate. Some people said he was okay sometimes, but people have always said he has the physical tools to be a good defender, but his effort and IQ was not there. Maybe his responsibility on offense was too much, and he didn't have the energy to play defense. But if he put his mind to it, he could do it. On the Warriors, especially during their championship run, Wiggins was the best one-on-one defender on the team. In the finals, he was the primary defender on Jason Tatum and held him to the worst playoff series of his life. In fact, Wiggins was the team's second best player throughout the playoffs. I don't think anyone saw that coming, not even the Warriors. He was rewarded with a 4-year, $110 million deal shortly after they won the title. He got that contract before Draymond Green got his extension. Oh, the Warriors know who's more important to the team now, and it's Wiggins. Anyway, that's all folks. Aaron Gordon and Andrew Wiggins were once considered, perhaps not complete busts, but they were severely underachieving compared to what they're capable of. It was a mishmash of problems, but these two also needed time to mature and figure out their roles. Now, they're looking better than ever. Let me know in the comment section if you can think of any other recent players who were busts, but revived their careers later on. I mentioned earlier I made a video on this 5 years ago, so check that out too if you haven't. Thank you all so much for watching, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.